And I'm grateful to Mr. Raghu, who has asked me to choose my own topic. I'm not able to hear you, Raghu.
Yeah, it is T.S. Gopalan and Co.
Okay.
Who have requested you.
On behalf of Mr. T.S. Gopalan and
Yes.
Co. Okay, I stand corrected there. And this is a area where many people are very reluctant to practice, as well as very difficult to understand, because it becomes the domain of the bench clerk of that court and the clerk of that office where the execution petitions are filed. And it's really tough to know the very many details unless you sit as a calling work for the entire minimum of 1 or 2 years during your initial years of practice in a district municipal court or where the trial work is going on, to attend to the calling work for all the execution petitions. Then you will know and understand the various stages in execution. In fact, I have been designated to be in the district municipal court for 2 years continuously, and I used to attend the calling work from the morning till from 10:30 till 1 o'clock, and I'll be representing very many advocates, and mostly the instructions will be only from the court clerk, that is advocate clerks, who would have prepared all the matters in the execution petition. That's why I have learned the nuances. I think I have learned the nuances, and I'm going to deliver and give it to you back to the profession as to what I have picked up in my years of service. Now, coming to the law of execution, I'll just share my PPT for the 1 minute. Host disabled participant. Raghu, please allow me to share the PPT.
Yes, ma'am. It's on. Yeah. It's come on.
Yeah. It's now visible to everyone?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
To us all. And what about the participants? It should be.
Yes. Now, in the execution petition, we usually have very many decrees which are executable, which are non-executable. Declaratory decrees are not as such executable. In fact, when we draft a compromise, if you want to follow it up with an enforceable decree, you must draft it in such a way that after the compromise decree, you have something to fall back on and proceed in the same proceedings to realize the fruits of the decree. Because mere declaration without any enforceable decree, then you have no right to file an execution petition. Now I have in this slide shown what are the different types of decrees which are executable. Namely, the money decree, where you want to get back your movable properties. Then there are restitution of conjugal rights, injunctions, execution of documents, possession. Then we have specific performance suits, very many which are there listed out in Order 21. Now, in order to enforce a successful decree, the advocates, even though we have fought till the Supreme Court, to get the fruits of the decree, it's very, very difficult. And in fact, another decade passes by the time you really see the end of the game. In fact, I can even say that many amendments have been made to various parts of the Civil Procedure Code, but not with reference to Order 21. Order 21 has remained in the book as it is without being touched by the legislature, even after so many years. In fact, 1908 was the CPC. Then there has been an amendment in 1976, but even in 2002, there has been an amendment, but still we have not touched any part of Order 21 because of its intricacies. In fact, taking cue from this execution and the various decisions, the income tax rules, which provides for the recovery of money under the Income Tax Act, which is followed in all the other legislations, have made some additional provisions, which I think should have also been incorporated under Order 21. And we have only some judge-made law on all those aspects. I'll touch upon as I proceed in the next lecture. Now coming to the method in which the execution proceedings are arranged. We start off with an application in which a notice has to be ordered to the judgment debtor. It depends upon the nature of the decree as to what will be the prayer in the execution petition. Suppose you want to execute a money decree or a decree which is enforceable by the obedience of the judgment debtor, then we ask for the arrest of the judgment debtor. The arrest of the judgment debtor, if it is not possible or you are not able to find him, then you have only another method is to attach the properties. In case it is a money decree, it is usually advisable to go proceed against the properties. Then we have after the attachment of property, you will be thinking it belongs to the judgment debtor, but there may be parties who may make claims. So there will be an adjudication of the claims with reference to the attached property. Then after the attachment claims are decided, we proceed with the sale of the property. After the sale of the property, the decree holder realizes his money. Then the issue comes whether the sale is valid or not. Then there is provision for setting aside the sale at the instance of the judgment debtor and also other parties who are interested in that property. After all that is finalized, we go for the delivery of possession. Oh, we finished, we have come to the end of the execution, we can go and take delivery. No, there also you will find obstructions. And after removal of obstruction, you will find the delivery being recorded and the decree holder being put in possession. So we go in this order, where if it is money, you go for arrest. If it is against the property, you go for attachment. In the case of attachment, a third party claim can come. If there is no claim, then we go for sale. In the course of sale, there can be grounds for setting aside sale. If they say setting aside sale, everything procedure is over and we will proceed with the delivery, sale is confirmed, then we go for delivery of possession. In the delivery of possession also, third party rights can come. Then we have the removal of obstruction. After that is decided, we go and take delivery of the property. So this is how the scheme of execution is arranged. And today I'll be touching upon the most vital aspects which we come across day-to-day execution petitions, and for which there are several case laws on the subject. Then some confusion exists even today. The first and foremost I would like to inform the listeners is regarding the payments and settlement made under Order 21 Rule 2. If you take Order 21 Rule 2, it speaks about how a money decree can be made, payments can be made under a money decree. If it is paid, the moment you get a decree, the payment, then it makes a payment directly by way of a deposit into court, no worry. Or if it is paid directly to the decree holder, then there should be an acknowledgement or acceptance by the said payment and recognized by the court. This is where we have a lot of litigation. What happens is, pursuant to the decree, some adjustments are made between the decree holder, and the judgment debtor, as a result of which the judgment debtor thinks that he has already paid off and the decree holder will not execute the decree and he keeps quiet. But the decree holder will come again and execute the decree by filing an EP. At that time, he'll say, no, I have already made the payment to him outside the court. Then the court insists that unless and until the judgment debtor has ensured that the payment made to the decree holder outside the court is recorded under Order 21 Rule 2, the court is not bound to recognize such payment. This is where the judgments are 2004 CTC 252. And then we have the 1999 6 SEC page 30. In fact, what happened was, in one case, both the parties agreed, yes, and a joint memo was filed before the court by both the decree holder and the judgment debtor. But no, the record of settlement was made, and No order was further passed, the EP was closed. The question arose whether it amounted to full satisfaction.
Madam, can I interrupt a minute?
Yes,
If
yes.
you switch on the slideshow, you will get a larger screen. Maybe that should be easier for people to read.
1 minute. Where you want me to do it?
Ma'am, it's in top left corner, ma'am. Top left.
1 minute. I'm not able to.
Yeah, top left, ma'am. Above the design tab.
Design.
Show apps, it shows Google. That's all.
Right side. Right, above the design tab, ma'am.
Okay.
Design, the above option. Next one. Design tab, above design tab, ma'am.
You will have to take your scroll.
Start from
Yes,
that's it.
That's it, ma'am.
this one, huh?
Yes.
And now it's okay?
Yes.
This is okay.
Okay.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah. Yes. I was on the payment. Yes. Now it's okay? Is this fine?
You're not a CEO, that's okay.
It's okay, ma'am. It's okay.
Yeah.
Now it is for the full screen, isn't it?
Yes, that's
ma'am.
right.
Yes,
Madam.
Yeah. Okay. So in this, a joint memo was filed and the court just recorded it and closed the EP. There was no further orders passed by the court. It was argued saying that there was no FS recorded. But there was a case where, though the parties filed a memo, the court dismissed the EP. And again, the decree holder came forward with an execution. The court said, therefore, that unless and until the court records the decree to have been satisfied under Order 21 Rule 2, the payment or the joint memo of compromise file will not be treated as FS, for full satisfaction memo. Therefore, we have to be very careful whenever any joint memo or even payment out of court is filed before the court in full satisfaction of the decree. I request all the advocates to ensure that the executing court passes a specific order recording the factum of full payment and saying that full satisfaction recorded and the EP is terminated. These two words are very important to avoid any further litigation or further execution at the instance of the decree holder. And any payment made outside court should be recorded, and you cannot even raise it in and subsequent proceedings and say that no, it is a compromise we have reached, I have adjusted it with some other court, some other payment, therefore you cannot adjust, therefore I am entitled to pay. So the court will not look into your payment or anything, and you will be forced to file another suit for recovery of money. Now in this, one other aspect is, at the time you make the payment, you can also say you are making the payment towards which part of the amount, whether towards the principal or towards the interest, towards the cost. If you insist on that and make the payment, then the court has to make the appropriation as per that direction. If you don't make that mention, it is open to the decree holder to first adjust the cost, then the interest, and then he'll remaining, if it is there, he'll adjust it in the principal. So you are entitled under the decree, even in the provisions of the CPC, under Order 21, you are entitled to show in what method you want the payment to be appropriated. So make it very clear that Order 21 Rule 2 is mandatory. The court will not recognize any payment made outside the court unless it is duly certified by the decree holder. If the decree holder doesn't come, you have to file an application as a on behalf of the judgment debtor before the court, to issue notice to him and see that it is recorded. Now coming to the next aspect, namely the two methods of recovery of money, that is by arrest of the judgment debtor and attachment and sale. Now coming to the arrest of the judgment debtor, Order 21 provides for that you can file an execution petition accompanied by an affidavit which shall state the reason why you want him to be arrested. The relevant provisions and the contents of the affidavit are as should be given in sections 55 to 59 of the CPC. Please read 55 to 59. It says in what circumstances a judgment debtor can be arrested. He has willfully and wantonly, though he has the resources to pay, is not paying the money, or he is trying to move away from the jurisdiction of the court, or he is trying to secret all his properties. So these are all reasons which are given, which you have to specifically mention. You just cannot make some vague affidavit and seek the arrest of the judgment debtor. And even assuming that there's going to be an application for arrest, the court usually orders notice in the said application. Normally, we adopt this method only when the JD is apprehensive about arrest. In my experience, I had on one occasion appeared in an execution petition for arrest. What happened was, the man was brought before the court. It was around 3 o'clock in the evening. And the judge asked him, are you willing to make the payment? He said, no, sir, I don't have money. Are you willing to go to the prison? He said, yes. He was ready to go to the prison. The whole difficulty was, the amount he has to pay was less than 5,000. But the cost for the payment, subsistence allowance payment for him to put in one day in prison itself ran at about 500 rupees. So there was no fun in spending more for that man by the decree holder just because he wants to be arrested. So the man was let off because the decree holder said, no, he has to pay me so much. I can't spend so much for him to be in the prison. So that's how whenever you advise a client for an arrest of the judgment debtor, it is very imperative that you see that the judgment debtor will be apprehensive about the arrest, and he'll also, the social stigma also is very much relevant to him, and he has some reputation. Otherwise, don't adopt this method of arrest of the judgment debtor if the man is really in dire circumstances, because he'll be willing to go and sit in the prison and have to enjoy his comfort there rather than be at home. So this is the, make a note that you cannot arrest a woman on the basis for a decree for money. Suppose you get a decree against a woman for decree for money, you cannot arrest a woman. That is also specifically provided in the sections 55 to 59. Next, we go to attachment and sale, which are governed by the provisions where I have said as section 60 to section 73 and order 21, rule 12 to 14 and 41 to 96. This is the most cumbersome and elaborate issues which are arising in these circumstances, which I'm going to touch upon in the subsequent slides. Now, for attachment and sale of a property, suppose I file a suit for decree for money today, and I know that he has got only one property. What I will do is, I try to attach it before judgment under order 38, rule 5. Order 38. Now, under order 38, if I have attached the property, I need not reattach the property after the decree. Any attachment before judgment will inure for the execution also. So no fresh attachment is required at the time when I file an EP if I have already attached the property. Now, if I have not attached any part of the property during the pendency of the suit, then I allow to file an application for an attachment and sale of the property for the realization of my money. Now we will go to order 21, rule 12. Whenever we seek an attachment of the property, we have to see the encumbrance certificate and also give the various details which are mentioned in order 21 to 11, 12 to 14. Now, we can initially, there are cases where the amount is not much. We can realize without attachment of immovable property, we can go for a movable property like car or lorry or computers, all of that. Then we can go for attachment of movables, which is provided under sections order 21 to 11 and 12. In case of attachment of movables, we can even go for more attachment of debt securities, garnish, that is, some money is payable to him from government, he can go and attach it. If he is a shareholder, you can go and attach his shares. Then if there is any payment payable to him from any third party, or he has got a decree against a third party, you can see that it is attached. So various methods of attachments are contemplated under the section. We can go one by one. In fact, you can take order 21. Rule 42 onwards. Rule 42 speaks about a case of decree for rent or mean profits. Rule 43 speaks about attachment of movable property other than agricultural produce. Then Rule 44 speaks about attachment of agricultural produce, then how it shall be dealt with. Rule 46 speaks about attachment of debt, share and other property not in possession of judgment debtor. So that, or not in possession of judgment debtor, is what is, we call it as the garnishee application. Then we have from 47, we have the attachment of share in movables. Then 48 is salary. 49 is partnership property. Then attachment of property in custody of court or public officer. Then we have the attachment of decrees, negotiable instruments. All these actually does not actually find any difficulty, because it's easier to be done, movables and all that. So we can proceed against him for these as far as movable property is concerned. These are the various provisions, and you can decide whether you want, if he doesn't have any immovable property, he can go. In pari materia, these provisions are rules 23 to 38 of the Income Tax Act, which also contemplate the attachment of these movable properties and its sale for the realization of the amount due to the payable as Income Tax Act, and also in other cases where the income tax rules are being followed. Now I'll go to the attachment and sale of the property. If you go to order 21 rule 13, it says that what shall be mentioned in the statement of particulars. The description of property must be clear. Then we have this order 21 rule 54 to 57, which are mandatory procedures to be followed by the court to effect the proper attachment of the property. If you have not done these procedures, then your attachment will be rendered void, and the court will subsequently set aside the sale itself. Notice under order 21 rule 54 is mandatory. If you don't follow that, no notice is issued to the JD, the whole proceedings are vitiated and it becomes void. So 21, 54 to 57 speak about what shall be the procedure to be adopted by the court for effecting an attachment. So initially they'll go by beat of tom-tom. There'll be an affixture on the property. Then there'll be an affixture in the courthouse and in the office of the collector where the revenue is paid. In fact, earlier we used to have case law saying that if all the modes are not followed, even if the beat of tom-tom has been omitted, then the attachment is not effected. So how the procedure is Order 21, Rule 54. All the 4 procedures mentioned in the section has to be followed for effecting an attachment. Otherwise, attachment is deemed to be not effected. Once the attachment is effected, if you see Rule 55, it speaks about the raising of attachment if the JD comes forward with the payment of the money. And once the payment is made, the court will say, yes, the attachment is raised. Earlier, under Order 21, Rule 54, whenever an attachment was effected, it was never communicated to the sub-registrar office. And pending attachment properties are being sold and dealt with by the judgment debtors. This has resulted in a spate of litigations, and the decree holders became remediless. And only for that reason, now the amendments have been made and the rules have been effected, whereby any attachment made by any court will be immediately sent to the encumbrance office, that is sub-registrar office, and will be reflected in the encumbrances certificate. So whenever you buy a property, when you know that there is an attachment which is there affected with worth of property and on whose claim, the details of the suit, where it is pending, everything will be reflected in the register of encumbrances. Now, once you have registered this attachment of property, then we go with the procedure for sale. I'll come to the third party claims as a separate slide. Now, once an attachment is over, what will I have to do next? There's an EP for application. I have to receive an application. It is for realization of money. A description of property is given. The encumbrance certificate, everything is given. So all the satisfactions are made. Notices are issued to the judgment debtor. He files some objection that is overruled and further proceedings are ordered. Now next stage is procedure for sale. If you go to Order 21, Rule 64, this is also very important. When I want to go for sale of the property, the court has to see whether what is the amount realizable under the decree, what is the amount mentioned in the EP, and what is the value of the property. The court has to consciously apply its mind and think whether for the value of the amount mentioned in the execution petition, whether we need to bring the property for the sale, which is worth, suppose for 5,000 rupees, I cannot bring a property worth 50 lakhs. This is called as excess execution. Therefore, the prime concern of the first initial court, the court itself, is under 2164 to find out whether the execution petition amount and the value of the property mentioned in the execution petition are not significantly, the gap is not very big. So it will be okay, because we know that in court sale, the amount will be far less. Therefore, it should not be so disproportionate to the value which is being claimed in the execution petition. Once that is received, the court is called upon to settle the proclamation for sale. This is very, very fundamental for any sale proceedings. This is there even in the Income Tax Act, rules 10 to 19A, read with 4851. We can go through that. What do you mean by settlement of proclamation? You can call it as SOP in execution court. If you go there, they'll say SOP. Once an attachment is effected, the court keeps adjourning it for SOP. What means settlement of proclamation? What is very important in settlement of proclamation is the court has to decide what will be the value for which the property has to be sold. What is the value given by the decree holder? If the judgment debtor has occurred after notice in the execution petition, whether he has given any value, and if the court feels that there is a very big difference between the value of the decree holder and the value of the judgment debtor. Suppose the decree holder says 5 lakhs and the judgment debtor says 50 lakhs. And the court can also take public notice of what is the property, where is it, what is its value. The court can ask for an expert opinion also, or it will call as testing the property. And the court can test the property and the Yamin's value is also put up. So in the settlement of proclamation, if both the parties have given their value, it has to be mentioned. If you fail to mention the value of the property given by both the parties, then the settlement of proclamation becomes a void and any sale held pursuant thereto will be set aside. So settling a proclamation of sale of the property is a very, very important aspect in a particular execution petition. So once the settlement of proclamation paper is filed by the decree holder, it will state his value. The court will order notice. In fact, they call it as sale notice. Initially attachment. In the EP for attachment, notice will be ordered in the first stage under Order 21 to 54. After notice is received, the judgment debtor can object to the attachment saying it is not my property or it is a joint family property. Then he can give whatever objections he can. It is for the court to decide the objections. And suppose it orders further execution, rejects his objections. The next stage is sale notice. Again, notice is sent to the JD for the settlement of proclamation to hear him on the value of the property which is sought to be sold. After hearing him, under Order 21 Rule 66, the court will settle the proclamation and it will send it to the NAZR's office for being sold at a particular date. So this particular condition under Order 21 Rule 66 is very important for going to the next stage, that is the sale of the property by the NAZR office. Then after the sale, the buyer has to make the payment of 25% immediately. Suppose the sale takes place in the evening by 3:30 or 4, and because of the bank, he can make the payment the next day, but not later than that. If he fails to make the payment of 25% immediately, then he will has to lose his right and the property will be brought for resale. After resale, then he has to, whatever amount he has deposited by way of an EMD, the poundage, everything will be adjusted, only and the balance amount will be paid to him. And the balance 75% has to be paid by him within 15 days under the CPC. And I understand under the Income Tax Act, it comes to around 30 days, if I'll stand corrected. Therefore, this particular aspect of 21 Rule 54 notice to JD, Order 21 Rule 66 notice to JD, for attachment and settlement of proclamation, we have to hear his objections before proceeding. If we don't do that, the entire sale procedure stands vitiated and the court has set aside those proceedings. That is the 1973 2 SCC, 1994 1 SCC 131 and 1993 4 SCC 414 and 2008 13 SCC 113, where the court specifically reiterated that notice under 2154 and 2166 are mandatory and the court cannot dispense with it. But there is one rider here in Order 21 Rule 66 which says that if the JD has appeared in 2154 notice and the court has heard his objections, then fresh notice to him will not be required for Order 21 Rule 66. Because he's already been heard and the execution petition is already entered appearance, no fresh notice is necessary. In case 5154 he has not appeared, then 2166 sale notice has to go to the judgment debtor and his objections has to be heard. If the JD has given his value of the property, irrespective of whether it is inflated or exaggerated, it has to be mentioned in the settlement of proclamation. It is very important. One minute. Now, after completing the sale procedures, the sale has to be confirmed by the court, and then the procedure for delivery of possession will start. Now, coming to delivery of possession, suppose the judgment debtor is in possession, no problem. If it is a suit for recovery of possession, Order 21 Rule 35 will apply. You can straight away go and take possession from the JD. If it is a suit for recovery of possession, but the JD is not in possession, but a tenant is in possession, then you can take only symbolic possession. That is under Order 21 Rule 36. 21 Rule 36 protects genuine bona fide tenants of the property who have entered possession prior to the institution of the suit for possession. Please note that the suit for recovery of possession is filed against the JD. After the suit is filed, if the judgment debtor has entered into lease agreements, created encumbrances of the property, then persons who came into possession of the property after the institution of the suit will not be entitled to protection under Order 21 Rule 36. They have to vacate and hand over possession. Whereas if you are already in possession, your tenancy rights are protected, and the suit for recovery of possession, you can be protected, and 2136, you can be given symbolic possession. Similarly, where there is an attachment and sale of the property, the suit was not for recovery of possession of the property, but it is for recovery of money. Now we have discussed that it was by way of an attachment and sale, the property is sold in court auction. Once the property is sold in court auction, then the auction purchaser is entitled to possession. How will he get possession? He has to file an application under Order 21 Rule 95. If the judgment debtor is in possession of the property, he can take delivery of possession under this provision, that is Order 21 Rule 95. Suppose he is not in possession, but somebody is in possession who has a legal right to be in possession, like a mortgagee in possession, or a tenant in possession, or a licensee is in possession. In such circumstances, the auction purchaser will not be entitled to actual delivery of possession. He will be entitled to symbolic possession, which we call under Order 21 Rule 96 of CPC. Now, once this possession, you try to go and take possession, like under 2135 or 36 or 95 or 96. When the decree holder or the auction purchaser goes to take delivery of possession, what happens if somebody else is in possession? He will say, no, I am obstructing the delivery. You cannot take possession of the property. What will the auction purchaser do then? Then the court ameen who goes there will record the objection and submit a report to the court saying that I am not able to hand over possession of the property. So and so is there. He is saying that he is entitled to the property on these grounds. If the person who is obstructing the possession is a person claiming under the judgment debtor, then the court has to find out whether he will be entitled to continue by way of granting a decree giving symbolic possession, or whether he is a person who has no right to be heard because he is bound by the decree, and he is also a person who is a pendenti light person, that is a person who has got any right pending the litigation. The court can reject his objections and order further proceedings for actual delivery of possession. No removal of obstruction petition is required. Please make that clear. If the decree holder goes or the auction purchaser goes to the property, they find a person who is obstructing the delivery of possession. What is the nature of right? He has to give by way of an objection to the ameen. The ameen will record his objections and report to the court. If the court finds the nature of objection raised by the person who is in actual possession is by way of claiming right under the existing judgment debtor and he is bound by the decree, then no further proceedings under Order 21 Rule 97 to 105 for removal of obstruction need to be argued or agitated or even applied for. Only when the third party in possession has an independent right, does not claim under the judgment debtor, then alone the court is called upon to decide his right, title and interest in respect of the property which has been auctioned or which has been decided in the suit under Order 21 Rule 97. So the same provisions are Rule 39 and 40 of the income tax rules. But in 39 and 40 of the income tax rules, the officer or the recovery officer cannot decide the title of the parties, but he can say the bona fides of the objections and find out whether he is in actual possession of the property and is not actually claiming under the SSC. In such circumstances, the person who is affected by the order under the income tax rules have a right to go before a civil court to establish his right. Whereas under Order 21 Rule 97 in the CPC, the CPC has been worded in such a way that it will be treated like a separate suit. The executing court itself has been called upon to decide the right, title, and interest of the abstractor, qua the decree holder or the auction purchaser, and proceed with the execution. So any judgment which is being passed under 2197 will have to be decided under Order 21 Rule 101, like any other suit. Suppose I have filed a suit for title or for recovery of possession. How the court will decide? The same way 2197 enjoins the court to decide the right, title, and interest of the person who is obstructing the recovery of possession and proceed accordingly. So full-fledged trial will take place under Order 21 Rule 97 applications, and the entire inquiry is under Order 21 Rule 101. Any decision made under Order 21 Rule 97 read with Order 21 Rule 101. That is, 101 is the procedure which has been adopted for deciding the suit. That is all. You have a right of appeal like a regular suit. Therefore, please note 2197 will be applicable only if the abstractor makes a third party claim and not under the judgment debtor. And once that is decided, it is res judicata as far as the title is concerned between the parties under the CPC, but not so under the income tax rules. Under the income tax rules, you have to file a separate suit, either it is the auction purchaser or and establish the title. And whatever the decision of the civil court, that will be conclusive qua the income tax certificate, the auction certificate, which has been sale certificate issued by under the income tax law rules. Therefore, in 2197, please ensure that you go for a full-fledged trial. It is not a summary inquiry. In execution petition, we'll call it as a summary inquiry. It's not so. It is a normal suit. Therefore, you have to try like a suit. Let in all your evidence, place all the materials before the court as if you have filed a suit for declaration of title. Therefore, 2197 is very important in cases of delivery of possession. Now, the most important aspects in the execution is section 47. What do you mean by section 47? If you read section 47, it says that all issues pertaining to the execution, discharge, and satisfaction of the decree can be decided by the executing court and not by a separate suit. What do you mean by this? It's a $1 million question. In fact, all the execution petitions are stultified and further proceedings are unable to be proceeded with merely because the JD files an application under section 47. It amounts to an implied stay. If the JD wants some time to take the payment or he wants to avoid the sale of the property, immediately we'll draft some application and we'll file it as section 47. And the courts will take their own time to dispose it of. Until section 47 is disposed of, the courts will never proceed with the execution proceedings. Now, what section 47 says is, the parties to suit, if you read section 47, all questions arising between the parties to the suit in which the decree was passed. It cannot be between third parties. That's what I'm saying. There are two aspects in the execution. As between the parties to the suit, who are the judgment debtor and the decree holder, or their representatives, or their assignees, or their successors in interest, any issue between them can be decided only under section 47 if it is after the decree. If any third party is there who is not making any claim under the parties to suit or the legal representatives, then the section 47 is not maintainable. So who can file section 47? It is only the parties to the suit. The court has clarified that even the auction purchaser will be treated as a party to the suit because his rights arise under the party to the suit. He'll be purchasing the right, title, and interest of the judgment debtor. Therefore, he is also treated as a party to the suit.
So a section 47 can be filed by the judgment debtor, the decree holder, the auction purchaser, or their legal representatives, or their assigns, or their successors in interest, or an agreement holder at the judgment debtor. So these persons alone, because they claim under the respective parties to the suit, they are alone entitled to maintain section 47 application. No other person can file section 47. Please make a note. For filing an application under section 47, what is it? We say that regarding this decree cannot be executed. It already stands discharged. It is already stands satisfied. So how can that be decided? You cannot file a separate suit. You have to file only here. Now, what is the type of satisfaction you can give? You're satisfied all the way. Suppose there is a decree for payment of money. I have already said that under Order 21 Rule 2, you have to record it by way of an order of court by filing an application and get the EP terminated and record full satisfaction. You have omitted it. That is, there is a time limit for doing that. If you have missed the time, can you raise it under section 47? Several matters have come only on that. The decree holders have played fraud on the judgment debtor and they have realized money more than what they are entitled to, merely because the JDs did not approach the court under 21(2) and get it recorded. This has resulted in an undue advantage to the decree holder, compelling the JD to file another proceeding for recovery of the money. Now, here, there's no limitation for filing a section 47 application. And if suppose the point you're going to raise in section 47, like to set aside the sale for irregularity or or any other aspect for which there's already a specific provision under the CPC, that it's Order 21 Rule 2, or for setting aside sale under 2189, or setting aside sale under 2190, all that can be decided under the respective provisions. If it is not covered by all of them, then you can file under section 47. Now, most points which are raised under 47 is the decree is a nullity. It is without jurisdiction. The court has said the question of decree without jurisdiction or a nullity can be raised in section 47, provided you are able to show that the earlier proceedings, the court had lacked inherent jurisdiction to try the suit itself. Not an erroneous decision or an irregular decision. You cannot question it on the ground of pecuniary jurisdiction. You cannot say that this court had no jurisdiction to pass this decree because it did not have the pecuniary jurisdiction. This court has got no jurisdiction to decide it because it has no territorial jurisdiction. The court, the decision, suppose a decree which is in effect should be governed by the DRT Act. You know section 34 which bars the proceedings with the civil court. Suppose that a decree is passed by a civil court in respect of a matter which is coming in the exclusive domain of the Land Acquisition Act or exclusive domain of the DRT Act or of the SARFAESI Act or of the Income Tax Act or of the Tamil Nadu Electricity Board, which all which are where suits have been barred under the statutes. Those decrees are, we call it as one without jurisdiction. Earlier we used to say that rent control court, we have to go straight away. We cannot file a suit for a building, recovery of a portion of a building within a regular suit. So suppose an ex parte decree is passed, the judgment debtor can raise it in execution and say, no, I am a tenant, admittedly I am governed by the Rent Control Act. The decree for possession granted in the present suit is without jurisdiction. It is a nullity. So unless the decree goes to the root of the jurisdiction of the court to very entertaining of the suit itself, you cannot raise it under section 47. Next is we have the decree when it becomes inexecutable by a subsequent event. When it will become inexecutable by a subsequent event? Suppose I have to perform a particular act and it has become incapable of performance. Then I can say that it is not possible. Similarly, there is a compromise reached between the parties, by which there is need not be recovery of money. I'm saying about like a specific performance suit. There is an agreement for specific performance, suit for specific performance is filed. The parties have entered into a subsequent compromise by which they have agreed for, instead of one acre and all, 50 cents is being sold. For the 50 cents they give up. and nobody comes and records it in the code, because 21.2 contemplates only for recording payment outside code, not all the compromises. Suppose the compromise is reached between the parties where there is a give and take, or there is some other decree between the parties where there is another compromise, and in spite of that, the decree holder suppressing it files an execution petition to enforce the decree, then the judgment debtor can file an application in section 47 and say that no, this decree has already become inexecutable for these reasons. The parties have changed their position. We have entered into such a compromise. Therefore, it is inexecutable. So only these types of applications which renders the enforcement of the decree impossible or incorrect, or it is already satisfied between the parties, or there is a change or a different contract between the parties, the section 47 can be invoked by the JD and say that it is therefore barred under law, it is become incapable of execution. Now I'm going a bit back where the property is being sold. Now, setting aside sale comes in all cases where there is a money decree. These provisions will apply in all cases of money decrees, not in other cases, because sale itself is only for realization of the money due, either under a mortgage or under a suit for recovery of money. A sale takes place. The provisions are interested in safeguarding the interest of the judgment debtor to protect his property. So they don't want to immediately say no, because when a man borrows money, he is always having some difficulties. Therefore, he is having some financial constraint. Therefore, he borrows the money. So the court wants to give him some time to save his property. So these provisions are there in the Civil Procedure Code. We'll take one by one. Order 21 Rule 89 speaks about the judgment debtor coming to court before the confirmation of sale by depositing the amount payable to the decree holder and asking the sale to be set aside. That is Order 21 Rule 89. And the deposit is a condition precedent. And it is open to the court to give him some relief if he wants some time. But Supreme Court has said it is a condition precedent in 2014, 6 SCC 397. Then we have, suppose the judgment debtor keeps quiet and he is not in a position to make the payment. So what will happen? He will file another application under 2190. If the judgment debtor has filed an application under 2190 saying that this sale has taken place, it has not followed the procedures under 2154 or 2166, settlement of proclamation has not been done, my value has not been fixed, there's no proper publication and conduct of the sale, there is an irregularity in the conduct of the conduct and publishing of the sale notice. So these grounds which are there mentioned in 2190 can be taken by the judgment debtor for setting aside the sale. Now, one interesting aspect in the execution petition is the judgment debtor is put on notice in every stage of execution. When the first notice is issued under Order 21 for the payment of money, it will be under Order 21 Rule 22. Where a notice is sent for recovery of money, the court will ask him, okay, you come and finish up. What is your answer? He is giving you this, so much your money is due. You come and give me an answer. Suppose he doesn't file any objection. He cannot raise the same objections which he is entitled to raise under 21.2 in response to a notice for recovery of money at a later stage of the execution. Similarly, in Order 21 Rule 90 for setting aside a sale, if the judgment debtor wants to say, no, the property is valued very low, it is of a higher value, it is more than 1 crore, therefore it has been sold for a very song. This point he cannot raise because he has been put on notice at the time of settlement of proclamation, which I discussed earlier. You may remember that under Order 21, Rule 54, when attachment was to be ordered, the court asked him, can I attach the property? Please give your objections. So some objections he has to give. Then he will say, the court says, no, I'm proceeding with the attachment. Come on, I'm going to settle the proclamation. Give me your value. What is your objection for settlement of proclamation? If the judgment debtor fails to give his value, then he cannot question the sale proceedings on the ground of inadequacy of price or failure to bid for a proper value of the property. The concept of constructive res judicata applies to every stage of execution proceedings. If the judgment debtor who had an opportunity to object at every stage keeps quiet, cannot be allowed to raise those objections at the later part of this later stage of the execution. This is a very interesting aspect in the execution petitions, but still none of us follow. Whatever we should have ought to have raised in Order 21, Rule 22 at the time the first notice comes, or under Order 21, Rule 54 when the attachment notice comes, or under Order 21, Rule 66 when the sale notice comes, we keep quiet, but we cannot raise those objections under Order 21, Rule 90 for setting aside a sale. So each and every stage, here judgment debtor is given an opportunity to raise his objections, which he ought to raise. If he fails to raise, then those objections cannot be raised and is deemed to have been barred from raising the same thing at a later point of time. Now, 2190 is an application for setting aside sale on the ground of irregularity. Next is 2191 is an interesting provision where the decree holder is entitled to set aside the sale for want of title of the judgment debtor. Now, after the auction has gone on, the decree holder or the auction purchaser finds that the judgment debtor had no title to the property, he can seek to set aside the sale. So that is under Order 21, Rule 91. Now questions have arisen as to who can file application under Order 21, Rule 90. 2189, nothing to worry, because even an agreement holder or a tenant, anybody can file under 2189 because deposit is condition precedent. You are interested in satisfying the decree. There's not much of a difficulty. But when it comes to 21 Rule 90, we must know who is entitled to set it aside. If you read Order 21 Rule 90, where any immovable property has been sold in execution of a decree, the decree holder or the purchaser or any other person entitled to share in a rateable distribution of assets, means that is other creditors, or whose interests are affected by the sale may apply to the court to set aside the sale on the ground of a material irregularity or fraud in publishing or conducting it. Now, how we have to understand this is, there are several creditors for the judgment debtor. One creditor brings the property for sale. The JD keeps quiet. He never makes objections. He never participates in the execution, but he allows the property to be sold. And it is sold for a song. What happens? Whatever that amount is filed left in the court will alone be available for the other creditors. So other creditors' interest to realize their money gets affected. So those creditors are also persons who are entitled to file an application under 2190 and say that this sale is not correct. It has been sold for a song. The property has not been properly brought for sale, and this will have so much of value. So those persons who are interested in the sale process can file an application under 21 Rule 90. This is the aspect. Now, as regards the application limitation is concerned, the judgment of the Supreme Court 2014 6 SCC 397 has clearly laid down that for an application under 21 Rule 89, the JD has to do it from the 60 days, within 60 days from the date of sale, not date of confirmation, before the confirmation, but 60 days from the date of sale. If anybody wants to file an application under Order 21 Rule 90, it shall be 30 days from the date of sale. Otherwise, the applications are barred. Now, I have already spoken about an excess execution. Normally in the executing code, suppose there are several properties and the liability is little, say about 5 lakhs or 10 lakhs, but we don't have, the JD doesn't have property worth so much. All they have to bring together several items. The code will normally, what they do is they split it up into various parts, like lots, lot 1, lot 2, lot 3, lot 4, and each lot will be given a specific value as per the code. This can be, the upset price will be fixed for lot 1, lot 2. So only if lot 1 is sold, if the amount is really sufficient to discharge the liability, the court will say that the Nazar will sell it lot 1, he'll let him realize the money. If it is not sufficient, next the lot 2 will be sold, next lot 3 will be sold. In those cases where the lots are there and there are several properties, the judgment debtor can participate at the time of settlement of proclamation to say that you please sell this property first and realize the money and then you can go. So the court, that's why the settlement of proclamation assumes significance when there are several properties and lots are there. And judgment debtor is called, is able to tell the court to which property can be sold first and when it can be sold, when the remaining amount can be realized later. That's why we call that as selling it as by lots, so that there will not be any excess execution. If you sell all the properties, that's not going to help, and it will be set aside in no time. That's why to avoid excess execution, they follow the procedure under Order 21 Rule 64, which specifically says that the court should ensure that they must sell properties which are only required for the discharge of the amount due. So to this extent, where the court has held against the sale having been in excess of execution is 2005 10 SEC, 235, 2007 13 SEC 576, 2006 3 SEC 49. These three cases, the courts held that there is an excess execution, the sale has to be set aside under Order 21 Rule 64. Now, I had already spoken about Order 21 Rule 97. That is a third party claim. Now, similar thing is there under Order 21 Rule 58. In fact, I had omitted it at the time when I spoke about the attachment. You may remember that Order 21 Rule 54 is an application by the decree holder for attachment and sale of the property. The moment an attachment is made, or there is an attachment, even pending suit like an attachment before judgment, then the execution petition will only ask for sale, saying that there is already an attachment, I only want sale of the property. So whether it is an attachment before judgment or attachment in the execution, when a third party comes to know about this attachment, he can file an application under Order 21 Rule 58, saying that this is a property of belonging to me. I am not claiming under the judgment debtor. The judgment debtor has got no saleable interest in this property. Therefore, please raise the attachment and release the property from the execution. This is his application under 2158. Prior to 1976, this Order 21 Rule 58 application, if it is filed very late at the last stage or at the time of auction or something, when execution proceeding for a long time, the courts used to dismiss the application, and the person who filed the application had the remedy to file a separate suit under Order 21 Rule 63. But now Order 21 Rule 63 has been removed. What the courts found, or what the legislature found was, if I allow the person to go and file a separate suit again, because of the separate suit, the execution petitions are all stalled and we are not coming to an end. So in order to speed up the execution process, the courts have, the CPC has been amended to say that whether a third party claim under 2158, saying that the attachment is improper, the property belongs to me, it does not belong to the JD, or an application under 2197 saying that the sale or the delivery of possession cannot be given because the property belongs to me. In both the cases, it is a third party not claiming under the judgment debtor coming to court to establish his right. In those cases, the court has to adjudicate on the right title of the abstractor vis-a-vis the judgment debtor. And all of them will be made parties to the suit, and the entire claim will be decided as if it is a suit on title. So 2158 specifically provides for such circumstances. And under either the judgment under 2158 or 97, it will be treated as a decree. For these two reliefs, you cannot go and maintain a separate suit. And a similar provision is found in Rule 11 of Second Schedule to the Income Tax Act and Rule 41 of the Income Tax Rules. One minute. One fundamental aspect which I would like to place on record, because it is not available in the Civil Procedure Code, and before I sign off and leave the floor to the listeners, is the fact that there is a judgment of the Supreme Court following the earlier judgment of the Madras High Court, which says that if the judgment debtor fails to object to the notice under 21 Rule 22. What is Order 21 Rule 22? It is a notice of the execution petition levied by the decree holder for a sum of money. Or for, we'll go to Rule 22 for a moment. Where an application for execution is made more than 2 years after the date of the decree, or against a legal representative of a party to the decree, or where an application is made for execution of a decree filed under so and so, against the assignee or receiver in insolvency, etc., the court executing the decree shall issue a notice to the person against whom execution is applied for, requiring him to show cause on a date to be fixed why the decree should not be executed against him. Provided that no such notice shall be necessary in consequence of more than 2 years have elapsed between the date of the decree and the application for execution, if the application is made within 2 years. I will not go into all that. Nothing, subclause 2 says, nothing in the foregoing subrule shall be deemed to preclude the court from issuing any process in execution of decree without issuing notice thereby prescribed. If for reasons to be recorded, it considers that the issue of such notice would cause unreasonable delay or would defeat the ends of justice. Now, this Order 21 Rule 22 is the fundamental premise on which the further execution proceeds, even including Order 21 Rule 54, attachment of property. Whatever may be the nature of application, whether you're going to seek for an arrest of the judgment debtor or you're going to ask for an attachment and sale of the property, whatever may be the nature of application, either for restitution of conjugal right or suit for specific performance, suit for other aspects for which is being provided, first notice in the execution petition to the judgment debtor comes under Order 21 Rule 22. If the judgment debtor finds that this decree is inexecutable, or he has got something to say that the decree cannot be executed against him, he has to file his objections immediately. If he doesn't file it, then he has no right to challenge that aspect of the inexecutability of the decree thereafter. That is 2008 4 ACC 615. If he feels that this order for further execution, saying that no, either a column of giving notice of arrest or asking him to attachment of the property, all that has to be challenged by him by way of an appeal. In fact, Order 43 does not provide for an appeal against an order under Order 21 Rule 22. But still the court says it is a final order and you have to file an appeal under Order 20. Again, any order under Order 21 Rule 22. If the JD wants to say that the EP is not maintainable and he wants to further proceed, he should raise the objection. If he has not done it, then he cannot raise it under Section 47, he cannot raise it under Order 21 Rule 89, he cannot do it under Order 21, any other provisions of the code. Please make a note of that. This is a very important provision and many of them are not aware of it, and that's the reason I think I should make a mention of it now. Now, in fact, I would like to highlight the fact that when I went through the income tax rules for the realization of where the appointment of recovery officer everybody is appointed, the provision specifically provides that persons whose interests are created, third-party persons whose interest is created after a notice of demand to the SSC, we are not entitled to maintain the application. But there's no such provision under the CPC, but we follow the principles of lis pendens and we ignore it. But everything is judgment law. In fact, it would be better that we also incorporate such very interesting provisions which are there in income tax rules in these Order 21 rules of the CPC, so that there'll be no ambiguity in these provisions. And with these, I think I have made my mind clear about the law of execution, and I leave the floor to the participants to place the questions to me. Thank you.
Thank you, madam. It's been a real fine lecture.
1 hour, 10 minutes.
Yeah, and that's it flies like anything. You know, we didn't really look at the time because time was not relevant at all. We learned a lot of things, and there are several questions that have come, and I'll try to read those questions one by one and request you to tell us on those questions. First, begin from the beginning. One Sahu Mishra, whether in an execution proceedings, both party or one party absent for 6 months, what options has the presiding officer?
What?
Whether in an execution proceeding, both party or one party absent for 6 months, what option does the presiding officer have?
See, if the decree holder absents himself, the court has to dismiss the EP for default. Okay. If the judgment debtor is remaining, the court can order further execution. If both are present, it has to be dismissed for default. That's all. It is always open to the parties for restoration of the application. There's no problem at all.
It's from Advocate Rajaram from Labour Court, Trichy. In an industrial dispute, if a company is a judgment debtor, whether arrest can be initiated against the manager in his individual capacity, and without arraying the managing director as a party in EP for arrest.
The question of what is the nature of decree we have to see. What is the nature of the award that has to be seen? There cannot be an arrest in these cases. It is only realizable. See, only in certain cases there can be an arrest where the decree can be enforced by the personal presence of the concerned person. Then only he can be arrested. The managing director is not personally liable for any claim against the company, so he cannot be personally arrested unless there is a specifically personal decree against him. He is only a representative of the company. Then you cannot arrest him. You can proceed only against the properties of the company.
Properties of the company.
Yes.
There are one Mr. P. Balaji. He wants to ask you 2 more clarifications. If the JD is residing in Chennai, but the property is situated outside the jurisdiction of the court, where EP is to be filed, and if the JD filed petition to declare him as insolvent, but the same is pending for adjudication, can the EP be continued for his arrest?
No. See, unless he is declared an insolvent, you can proceed in the EP court. As far as insolvency is concerned, till he is adjudged an insolvent, there's no bar. Merely because insolvency proceedings are pending, it doesn't mean that there is a bar or there is a stay of the proceedings. And if he is adjudged an insolvent, then all proceedings against the individual of the person is stayed. Therefore, there can be no question of arrest of the JD. Okay. As far as the property is concerned, if the JD is in Chennai and the property is outside the jurisdiction, what you want to do? You want an arrest, you have to file it here. If you want the property to be attached is outside the jurisdiction of Chennai, which court passed the decree? If it is the court which passed the decree is in Chennai, then you file the EP here and ask the court to transmit this decree along with your execution petition to the concerned court where you want to proceed against their property. So that is called as transmitting the decree. So a decree has to be transmitted to another court for execution against the properties which are within that jurisdiction. And the court will, in the order of transfer, it will say that so-and-so has got a decree in this court. This is the amount payable. So far, no EP has been filed before this court. And therefore, the amount that is realizable under the decree is so-and-so. It just remains unsatisfied. You may realize this by way of the respective execution petition before that court. So after the transmission is over, the decree holder has to go to that court and proceed with the execution in that court.
Madam, can there be simultaneous executions, one of a transferred decree, another of another property or another attachable assets in in the place where the court has passed the decree?
No, there cannot be two execution petitions. For the you can proceed against the person and property of the deceased, of the property judgment debtor, and there is a specific provision under section 50. Says that simultaneous execution is not allowed.
Thank you, madam. The next question is, madam, madam, in case of a decree for specific performance being passed with reference to a housing board property, where there is no sale deed executed by the housing board in favor of the decree holder, can it be challenged under section 47 as being inexecutable on the ground that decree holder himself does not have right over the property? This is from Meenakshi.
Judgment debtor, not decree holder.
Yes.
It should be judgment debtor.
Yeah, it should be judgment debtor. This is from Meenakshi.
No, that's what. If the decree itself is a nullity, if you say that he has got no saleable interest at all, then you can always say that I don't have even any property, therefore the decree is inexecutable. See, the whole problem here is the judgment debtor would have remained ex parte. You would not even inform the court that he has not got a sale deed. The decree holder would have got a decree for specific performance. He would have even got a registered sale deed in his name. What he gets is what is available with the judgment debtor. That's all. So JD need not worry. But what happens is, if the judgment debtor gets a sale deed from the housing board at a later point of time, then by the principle of doctrine of feeding the estoppel, the decree holder becomes the owner of the property. That's the problem. So 47, the decree holder, the judgment debtor, if he has kept quiet, he cannot raise it under 47. Because it is not one without jurisdiction. What the decree holder has got only the right title interest of the JD. That's all. So it cannot be raised under 47.
When a tenant is occupying a building in execution proceedings of a money decree, can he get physical possession or symbolic possession?
Repeat.
When the tenant is occupying the building in execution proceedings, decree holder of a money decree, can he get physical possession or symbolic possession?
That's what I told you, under Order 21, Rule 96. In case of a decree holder he cannot take possession unless he becomes the auction purchaser. If he becomes an auction purchaser, then he can take delivery only under Order 21, Rule 95 or Rule 96. 95 speaks about actual possession from the JD. But if a tenant is in possession, he must be in possession prior to the suit. Any interest created pending the suit will not protect the tenant, and therefore he is entitled to actual possession. If he is a tenant, even prior to the suit under the JD, then under 21 Rule 96, the decree holder will be entitled only to symbolic possession.
And then the next question is from Mr. I think Alauddin, right? Mr. Alauddin, he wants to know, if I attach salary of a judgment debtor, the attachment is made only for a specific period.
Yes.
Thereafter, how to recover the money due from?
So there is a gap. I think you have to wait for another 1 year or so and then reattach it. That's all.
Once again, you need to follow the process.
Same.
File an execution petition.
Yes.
Then the next question is from Malini. once a sale is completed and possession is delivered, can a third party file a petition under Order 21, Rule 58?
No, because if you want, you have to establish by way of a suit, because the whole proceedings have come to a zero.
Can possession be obtained in execution of a decree of a permanent injunction?
No, that is a permanent injunction. See, the decree is there, and if suppose he disturbs your possession, your lost possession, in spite of the decree for injunction, you can seek the remedy under the code, under Order 21. There's a provision which says that you can seek for attachment of the property, and you can, since the decree is for injunction, that you should not disturb your possession, you can ask for restoration of possession in the EP. Because he has disobeyed the order of injunction, decree for injunction.
There is one from Mr. Amudan Advocate. EP for arrest is pending, but not able to execute the arrest warrant. Can we file simultaneous another EP for attachment?
You have to withdraw this and file. Unless, see, there is no bar. It specifically says simultaneous execution against person and property should not be done. But in these cases, if the court permits, you can file. Otherwise, you have to withdraw the arrest and then file the proceed against the property.
There's one more from Srinivasan M. Arbitration award is passed. EP filed for execution of the award. The executing court has interpreted the award and tried to execute the award. Can appeal be filed on the interpretation of the award by executing court as it is not appealable under Order 37 of the Arbitration Act?
I remember to have seen an OSA which has been filed against a similar type of order. I think it is because it decides the rights of parties. In the High Court, an OSA was filed, but I don't know about the court. You have to file a revision against that order. You can file a revision CRP against that order under 227. If it is a district court, and if it is in the High Court, I think from the executing court, you can file it under clause 12 of letters patent. 15 of
Mr. Senthil Kumar will be asking you a question, ma'am. Mr. Senthil Kumar?
Yes, sir. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Good morning, ma'am.
Madam.
Yeah, good morning, ma'am. Hello. Ma'am, if the JD has only entitled to the portion of the property, but the degree holder has attached the entire property and the property has been sold by the court auction, ma'am, then what is the remedy to the other shareholders? The shareholders
can file a suit for partition and say that he is entitled to only so much.
Yes, already this suit property was partitioned. Yes, already partitioned. But the other holders has now filed the separate suit to challenge the decree. Apart from the suit, ma'am, is there any remedy available to the shareholder?
No, see, you should not file a suit challenging the decree. That is incorrect. See, what the decree holder or the auction purchaser purchases in a court auction is only the right, title and interest of the judgment debtor.
Yes.
Merely because the property described is the entire property, the decree holder will not get its entirety. What he gets is only the right, title and interest of the judgment debtor in that property. If it has already been a registered document between the parties and he is having only 1/4 share, what he has purchased is only 1/4. And the suit should have been only for saying declaration the property belongs to the remaining person and this person is only entitled to 1/4, or for a partition. You cannot challenge a decree in that.
Now they are invoking the provisions under the Order 21 Rule 58 or Section 47 in the TEP, ma'am.
How can that be done? After the sale, everything is over. You cannot raise Order 21 Rule 58.
Okay.
You have to file a separate suit.
Because Allsum Possession has filed the application to deliver the portion. Because
then under 2197 you can file.
I am unmuting
the
Mr.
of 2190.
Question.
Hello.
Yeah, madam. Mr. Siva Subramaniam wants to ask you a question. I'm putting him on the line.
Good morning, ma'am.
Yes.
Thank you for enlightening us, ma'am. I have two questions, ma'am. My first question is, ma'am, in Moneysuit, EP auction was ordered. In auction sale, if no buyer or purchaser come forward to take the property in auction, then it will be posted for a reduction of price or a second auction. While pending second auction sale, ma'am, can we file arrest application?
No, either you proceed against the property or you have to proceed against the arrest. That's all. You can't do both.
So simultaneously we cannot. Okay,
No,
okay, ma'am. Second question, ma'am. Okay, ma'am. Second, ma'am, is it possible to file attachment of rent in the Moneysuit?
Yeah, okay. Yes.
Oh, in the building, the auction building, ma'am, they are receiving rent. Can we claim the rent in the same proceeding in the same EP?
In the same EP, you can't.
Oh.
See, it will be an attachment of movable property that is separately provided for. You have to file a separate application for that.
To come to the end of the session.
You can close the CP and then proceed. That's all.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Madam, we have come to the end of the session.
Yes, sir.
And I can proudly tell you that because of your eloquence and articulation, there have been 270 participants today. That's a great number. It all speaks volumes about your mastery in the subject.
Not mastery, about the topic.
And I also should say this. And we are all really happy, and we are very, very thankful to you for sparing your time and helping us all in our questions. Okay. Thank you so much, madam.
Thank you very much.
And tomorrow's topic will be by Mr. V. Prakash, Senior Counsel, on evolution of public interest litigation in India and its possible future.
Sure.
Madam, thank you so much once again.
Thank you.
We are all very glad to have listened to you. And it's maybe we can go back.
I was expecting questions from you, you didn't.
Oh, madam, I wouldn't. Of course, if you still want me to, I can ask you questions. But I am a novice in this subject. I wouldn't want really to do it. I would want others to participate and ask. Yes, I have some questions in the execution of what do you call orders of the Debts Recovery Tribunal. When a Debts Recovery Tribunal issues a certificate of recovery, it issues it directly to the recovery officer. It appears that there is no role to play, no role by the bank or any other institution to play in the recovery, and it becomes the duty of the recovery officer. It is unlike execution proceeding in under section 21, order 21. Can you throw some light on this if you have some?
In fact, if you take CPC order 21, it specifically contemplates an oral application or a written application. An oral application will apply only when the JD is very much present within the precincts of the court at the time the decree is passed and he makes an oral application. Otherwise, there should be a written application for execution. Otherwise, no court is going to accept any decree as a matter of right. Because I can file an EP here, I can file an EP some other place. Whereas as far as the recovery officer and the income tax provisions which show that once the recovery certificate is issued, it is for the recovery officer to issue notice asking the concerned person to comply with the demand within 15 days and then proceed with the execution if he fails to do. There's no specific provision for filing an application at all.
You know what really happens before the recovery officer is they think that they are an executing court and want us to file applications and identify the property and do other things.
No, see, the identification of the property will come later. First, initially, the recovery officer has to immediately issue notice fixing a date of hearing for the appearance of the concerned JD. And after hearing his objection, say that I am not going to hear it, you are not willing to make the payment, therefore I am proceeding with the execution. At that time, both the parties will have to appear before the recovery officer and proceed with the execution.
Thank you, madam.
You or the bank or anybody to file an application at all, like CPC.
Ma'am, one more question. We've always been facing, I think banks have been facing this problem before civil courts. When you want to attach a property, is it always necessary that you should have to give the boundaries of that property, survey number and other things? Or is it enough that you identify it by a door number or by location?
In fact, if you take 21, rule 12, rule 13. What an attachment of immovable property, when you want to proceed against a property, what the content should be is specifically provided in that rule 13. It shall
merely say sufficient to identify the same.
Yes, it should be. Suppose I have a door number. In municipalities, I know the door number is sufficient to identify a property. I need not say west of door number 10, east of door number 12. I need not say. If I say door number 11, it is sufficient. So it only says the description must be sufficient to identify the property. Suppose if it is going to be a vacant land and then there will be difficulty in identifying the land, you require the boundaries with specific measurements. Otherwise, difficulty. Suppose I'm going to sell 5 cents of land. Where is that 5 cents out of that total of 50 cents? So you must earmark, okay, I'm going to give some boundaries. But boundaries again will not be sufficient. You have to give the linear measurements to fix the 5 cents. So you should be capable of identifying. Because tomorrow when you go for delivery, you must be in a position to localize the property and take possession.
Should an executing court determine the value and fix the upset price of the property, or is it enough that it indicates the values claimed by the judgment debtor and the judgment creditor?
No, the executing court has to fix an upset price below which you can't sell. That is always done. It's basically that's the settlement of proclamation itself is intended only for that, because it should not be sold for a song. So it says that this will be the minimum price at which they cannot be, below which you cannot sell. That is always usually, upset price is always fixed.
Once I do not object to the settlement of proclamation, can I object to it later on after the property is sold?
No, you can't. That's what I'm saying. It becomes res judicata. It's a constructive res judicata.
Constructive res judicata.
In all stages of execution, it will apply. You will have a very difficult situation.
Madam, thank you so much.
Welcome.
It's been a real great session. We all enjoyed it. It was educative. And we are very happy that we could get you amongst us all for this session. And I should only say this. You've always been saying this. I've always admired you, your court craft and your eloquence in the court. And it is amply evident here also. We're all thankful to you, ma'am. Thanks. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Bye.